quiet's photosynthesis stuff. I think that's fair. I think that you can find it silly. But what the defense that I will give of it is not necessarily I love that and I think it's perfect writing. It is a thing that was established in this universe like a decade before this game was made. So, like, I mean, to be fair, if Kojima, as much as he's crazy, and I agree he is, he's out of his mind, sometimes he shoots for the moon and just ends up hopping right over the shark and not hitting the moon. And it, you know, it happens to him sometimes. And I won't argue he's a perfect writer, but I kind of love him, and I sort of love his worlds now too, because I love Metal Gear, I love Zone of the Enders. I actually didn't even mind Boktai. I only played one of them. It's like his vampire game that was on Game Boy Advance. And Death Stranding. Death Stranding I actually really love a lot. In fact, I'm probably going to play Death Stranding Director's Cut, which I've not played, this year in anticipation of Death Stranding 2 coming out. I really think that he does a pretty decent job of staying within his own rules. And the worst parts about the Metal Gear Solid franchise are when he breaks his own rules. Because he does do that. He absolutely does. And he does it often. And when that happens, every time, I'm always like, oh man, you went too far. And I'm sure it's going to happen in Death Stranding as well. So one of the reasons I want to replay Death Stranding. I think if Microsoft wants to really get Kojima in their pocket, they would buy buy Metal Gear off Konami, and then just say, Microsoft's publishing it, but you can do whatever you want. You can not make any games ever. It's just, we have it, it's safe, they're not going to ruin it. We'll release good ports. Like, we'll get them running on PC and Xbox and have them all work perfectly because now we own the brand. I actually think that would end up being a good time in which Microsoft did consolidation stuff. Because, yes, Microsoft's better than Konami. They are. Konami sucks. They're the worst. I hate them. I hate them, and I love so many of their games, and that pisses me off. Because I hate everything about them other than the games. And even then, none of the newer games that they've released, including re-releases of old games that I did love. What's crazy about this one is there's effectively no kind of mission that you can't design for it because of how flexible this sandbox is. It's like, oh, what about a tank mission where it's like a battalion of tanks and you're in a tank fighting them? Yeah, you can do that in Metal Gear Solid, I guess, Metal Gear 5 if you want. There's tanks, you can drive them, you can shoot them. Same with all sorts of other vehicles. Because you can't fly the helicopters or fly planes, but any kind of ground warfare can go down in this game. You could have artillery strikes. Like, it's wild what starts happening when you get a ton of money at your Diamond Dogs base, because you start getting a lot of cool stuff. And what's crazy is I don't use most of it, because I like playing this game mostly stealth. I wear a sneaking suit. I primarily use silent tranquilizer weapons. With dynamic weather conditions, time of day, that like happens real time within missions. It doesn't just like load in as one and it's like, hey, Africa daytime, just this section. I guess you are sometimes limited by your mission area, but unless it makes you extract your helicopter, you can just stay in the area, finish the main mission, and then go wherever you want and do a side mission from there without getting into your helicopter. A very good video game. I really love Metal Gear Solid 5, man. I almost forgot how much I loved it. So it's very nice to play it again. And it's so awesome playing it with a mouse and keyboard, even if I don't have an ideal setup here. The challenge of surviving any combat in 3 is the thing that makes you want to not fight. It makes you want to be stealthy. Whereas in this game, I'm being stealthy because I find it fun. I don't really have to be. I can go in guns blazing. I would wear different armor. I would still pretty much be doing a lot of the same stuff. Okay. Whew. Oh, I love the CQC in this game. It's really good. It's so satisfying. When you manage to get them by surprise like that, you can have them see you as long as you hit the first guy before there's a real alert phase, before they call anyone in, you know? Creates good moments like that. Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 5 is really good, guys. It's a lot of fun. Because, hey, That could have been a, hey, I'm grenade launching my way out of a building like the Terminator scene. Or it could be that very, very sneaky James Bond, like silence tranquilizer darts and unarmed combat, just boom. Definitely, yeah, ninja a couple dudes down. It's good stuff. It's all good stuff. There are an estimated 7,100 languages spoken in the world, but only 6 are designated as official languages of... Oh, hell, Kojima. Kojima, that's the one thing you really need to work on, man. Give me more time to read the text aloud. Anyways, so you get the credits here, so technically this is the end of the game, but there's still like 50 hours left. This is the first time I've played it in full, or at least Act 1 in full, since the game launched, really. Like, I played the hell out of it for about 100 hours straight on PS4, and then I'd not played it again because it's a really daunting Metal Gear game to go through. Every so often I would fire up like this scene or something like that. You can kind of watch through most of the movie, and especially once you've unlocked all the missions, jumping around's pretty easy to do. I really enjoyed this a lot. I had a lot of fun playing it, and Metal Gear Solid 5 still tons of fun to play. It really sort of crystallized when I say that The Last of Us Part 2 has bad stealth. Like, this is good stealth. You know, like, it's not like I'm saying like, oh, well, you know, it just should be better. It should be more fun, you know. And no one's ever done it really, but you know, you could do stealth better than that. It just sucks. It's like, no. Like, this is a stealth action game, man. Stealth isn't just a thing you kind of can do. It's something that if you're really good at, you can do it perfectly. And when you are spotted, it feels like it's like, maybe I deserved that a little, you know. I could have been more careful. I think it controls beautifully. I loved playing it with a mouse and keyboard. It was awesome. This is a really sweet little puppy. Her name's Jojo. She's very cute. And the story, I think, is very compelling in Act 1, at least. Act 2, it gets more confusing, even though a lot of the stuff that happens is really, really awesome in Act 2. I think Act 2's got a lot of good stuff as well. But Act 1's got a pretty straightforward revenge story. It's just told over the course of like a private military corporation's military campaign over the course of a couple months, like, you know, like, or maybe a year. Well, I mean, the whole game takes place in 1984, so there is a timeline. But like, I mean, you're there a while. You do a lot of stuff, but in both Afghanistan and in Africa, you get a little drip feed of story every so often. But when you put it all together with the idea of the threat being a parasite that is aggravated by certain sounds and can be programmed to target a language, a specific language, so that all the speakers of that language either have to stop speaking it or die. Or, I mean, maybe they might not have a choice because they might get infected before they even realize they have it. But once people realize, oh, this is the language you can't speak, no one would ever be able to speak that language again. You could like make it so that English or Japanese or Spanish is just something people can't speak because they might be infected by these parasites and might die. And I think that's a pretty cool WMD, like, for a lack of a better way of putting it. It, in addition to Sahelanthropus, or the Metal Gear of this game, being the main threat, I think is really awesome. So as much as people say, like, yeah, the story from Metal Gear 5 sucks, I'm like, that's not really true. It's just presented in a way that's very much unlike the rest of the series, I think. Now, I'm sure there's holes you could poke in it. And I mean, granted, I might not just be thinking about them ever so hard or bringing out the most careful lens to pick apart every little aspect of the story. But as I was watching it, I was pretty enthralled by it. I think that a lot of it was more high concept and interesting than anything you'd find in most modern movies. Or most modern action movies, like genre movies, like the sci-fi action, alternate history, Cold War fiction. There's not tons of that's done in as anime a fashion, as action movie a fashion as Metal Gear is, that I think, you know, has a good storyteller at the helm. And I think that as much as Kojima is not the greatest writer, I think he is a very good storyteller. And video games are his medium, which is why anytime people tell me, hey, Kojima should really be directing movies, I'm like, No, games are his thing. He does them well. He does them probably better than he would make a movie, I think. 30 FPS is the mode that was the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 version of this game. The one that we just finished, by the way, too. That was made for PS3, okay? Phantom Pain is on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. So you're wondering, it's like, okay, that Sahelanthropus fight's not a lot of frame dips. It was actually running really well. It's like, yeah, because the target's low. They just use a lot of things to make the game look really nice while you're playing it anyways. We don't have to have the games push this hardware as hard as we're doing, man. We can just have things look good and run well. It'd be great. I ended up playing this quite a lot just because it kind of reminded me of the same thing. It's like, wow, this is kind of unlike anything I've ever played before. It seems like 5 levels above everything I've ever seen. And at the time, especially, because this was 2014 when this came out, maybe even 2014 when Ground Zeroes came out. 2015 is when Phantom Pain came out. But anyways, you could play this a hell of a lot of times before that game came out. Here you don't have the Fulton system, but you can capture guards by bringing them over to your drop point, which I'll have another one down here as well. You can bring them down to the beach, extract soldiers, and then you can boot up your save file for Phantom Pain, and you have those soldiers in your army already. It's kind of cool. Even though lore-wise, it kind of doesn't make sense that those people would still be there. The vocal guide for Donna Burke, who sings Snake Eater, is also the supply drop inbound. I didn't even realize that. That's crazy. She's the iDroid. She's Siri. Donna Burke is the Cortana of Metal Gear Solid 5. That's pretty great. See, sometimes watching the credits is a good idea. But yeah, so Ground Zeroes, it was definitely kind of overpriced. They tried to make it as valuable as they could, and it wasn't overpriced if you're the kind of Metal Gear fan or the kind of person that just really likes that game and played the hell out of it, which I did. So for me, I was like, well, yeah, like people were like, oh, that was such a ripoff. I'm like, I don't know, I got $30 worth of enjoyment out of it at least. It was my favorite game on PS4 for most of 2014. It was one of those things that year people were like, well, what's game of the year? Like, I guess Shadow of Mordor or something like that. I'm like, for me, it was Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. It was $30, and I played like 60 hours of it. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's one of those things, and valuing games is kind of tricky to decide sometimes. I'm not defending Konami's decision to kind of split it up, but at the same time, if Kojima was like, hey, I could make a small one that's just one base, and we could experiment with a bunch of different objectives added and different elements and have some vehicles and, you know, make a scenario and have the prologue, and then the main game, the main Metal Gear Solid 5 takes place 9 years later in 1984, and it's these characters having lost limbs and getting revenge for that. Because Act 1 is this, the Ground Zero story ends in Act 1 of Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. Everything else is kind of character stuff based on what's happening in the aftermath of Act 1, and a lot of it's really good. I especially like the stuff with Quiet in Act 2. I think it's really awesome. I really like Metal Gear Solid 5. The whole project, even though it was split into 2 games, almost like early access, you know? It was like, this was the trial version of Metal Gear Solid 5. They got a lot of feedback from it. They definitely improved the controls and the way the game feels. Like, I did notice a pretty big difference between Phantom Pain and Ground Zeroes going from one to the next like that. I think playing both of them is worthwhile, though. You should play Ground Zeroes first, though. That's kind of why I wanted to throw it in there, because clearly, I mean, I just got the Steam achievements for it, so I've never even played it on PC. I would just skip right to Phantom Pain, because I'm like, okay, I know what happens in Ground Zeroes. The thing about the Metal Gear games is you can kind of play them in any order, really. I would recommend not making the first one you play 4, because 4 will just ruin a bunch of the intrigue and stories in the other games. But the mystery box, for lack of a better way of putting it, doesn't really get solved until 4. And this game mostly functions as connecting fiber, I guess, between the sequel series and the modern series. But it also is a little bit incomplete, and its storytelling is much more subdued. You know, like, it's not overloading you with cinematic story sequences all the time. This one's a Steam game. You should play Ground Zeroes first. Play Ground Zeroes and then play Phantom Pain. think that's a nice little series that you can do. It's the end of an arc, but it's the end of an arc that begins in Metal Gear Solid 3, goes through Peace Walker, and then the 2 games that make up Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain. This game just removed the story from it entirely, and it's just an incredible game. It's one of the best ever. Like, it actually is. It is the best stealth action game, I think. I don't think there's any that are even in its ballpark. The story is strange. It is structured oddly, but man, the flexibility in this game and the options you have make it something pretty special. Also, it looks beautiful. It's stunning. This game runs on PS3. And it looks amazing, you know? It's just, it's beautiful. The Fox engine was just the best piece of technology that ever got swallowed into a sports games franchise and pooped out into obscurity. Because I'm willing to bet Pro Evolution's probably going to be switching on Unreal or something anytime. And even Metal Gear Delta is Unreal Engine. They're not even using the Fox engine. I was like, you guys have the Fox engine. Why use Unreal? You guys could be the ones being like, hey, Fox engine Metal Gear 3, let's do it. I'd play Metal Gear Solid 3 looking exactly like this. It doesn't have to look any nicer. I'd be so happy. But no, Unreal 5. It's neat that as you get into the game and develop more things and research more stuff and get into Act 2 where, you know, you should have a fair amount of money and resources at your private military company, which is basically what we're simulating in this game, that we run a group of mercenaries operating from an oil rig during the Cold War, during the 80s, late Cold War. And yeah, this is quiet. She's a good lady. And then Exalted too, okay. I've got a thing for that! We have to have the graphics cranked up. You're looking at our cities, baby. I'm like, yeah, but can I turn them down a little so that this game doesn't run like my PS5 is dying? Yeah, I will leave you in peace is definitely a better thing to say than legendary gloves, son! Fell into the blade of Pinocchio, son of Geppetto. Real boy. Also mouse. X-Ray Girl sometimes does joke that she gave birth to the puppies. At least I think it's a joke. Yeah! Oh my god, X-Ray Girl did it!